Hey, what's up? This is Silas. So, some time back, I just wrote this on my wall. I was just thinking about this and it came to me. Is it white female privilege that they can give birth to black children, but black men cannot father white children? Now, I posted this on a social media portal and I was thinking about this because when you have people like Colin Kaepernick, who is the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, started this thing where he was taking a knee apparently to object against the way certain minorities are treated in the United States of America. He was taking a knee during the flag, during the national anthem that was being sang before the games. And then you have people like Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama of the United States of America, who people were saying this is our first black president. So you have these two people. With Barack Obama, he was raised by I think his mother's family, and his mother's family was white. His dad was I think he was a Kenyan immigrant to the United States of America, born in Hawaii, whatever, would they show me the birth certificate thing. So that was there, but he was still considered to be the first black president. He was raised by a white family. I think it was his mom and his grandmother's family. He was spent a lot of time in Indonesia during his childhood, so his culture was mixed in that way. And I keep coming back to this. I've kept saying this. I thought one of the strongest things about Barack Obama that would have been nice to see was if the country itself focused on the fact that he is mixed. He's somebody from a migrant, somebody from a local, relatively local. She's a couple generation American. You have your first generation American with his father coming in, you have the black, you have the white, you have the different cultures, you have them being raised in Asia. There was this mix to show that this is actually a melting pot result. If they had that kind of situation, I think that would have been a fantastic thing to follow on. But going back to this thing, is it white female privilege that they can give birth to black children, but black men cannot father white children? In this situation, his mother actually raised him. He was raised in an Asian culture, I said, like with Indonesia, yet he is considered black. Now, his father couldn't give birth to a white kid. Now, the same thing with Colin Kaepernick. Okay, not exactly the same thing, but with Colin Kaepernick, I think his birth mother, who was white, gave him up, and he was adopted by a white family he had white siblings. I mean, I'm saying white in however you want to define it. I know I've discussed in a video what does white mean, but let's just say recently Anglo-Saxon, not Anglo-Saxon, recently. See, that's the thing. You can't even think of a really good way to describe what white is. But you know what I mean. Europeanish. Let's put it that way. Because now we talk about, are the Spanish people with Latin America, are those people white? But yes, there's so much quagmire with this. But anyway, they are considered, Barack Obama was considered black. Colin Kaepernick is considered black, even though they were technically raised by what anyone would consider to be white people. So in a white culture, in Obama's case, in partly of an Asian culture, yet he's still considered to be black. So I posted this and a couple of people laughed at it. Then a couple of people posted some articles about how people had the black and white twins. And I'm going to read something for you later that I actually wrote about this before. Back in, I think, 2009. How old is this article? Yes, back in 2009 in my blog, I wrote this one thing called "Doesn't matter if you're black or white, your sisters were first." And I'll get to that later. But let's just talk about some of the comments that were there. There was people pointing out that yes, these are phenotypically, even if you don't want to completely go along with the whole out of Africa hypothesis where they say humankind developed from out of Africa. I know there's a whole situation, they might be Neanderthal involvement in Europe. There might be situations of finding older bones somewhere in Europe, so you can say they came from different strains. Or you can have something like the Aborigines in Australia who might have actually developed from different ancestors. But whatever. Regardless, you have the highest prevalence of albinism, which is just having no pigment. So you have the white hair, the pink eyes, the really light skin in Africans. And the other day I saw an albino Asian. It was at a McDonald's. So just seeing an Asian at McDonald's is not a regular thing because this wasn't in San Francisco or the West Coast. But that was strange enough. And it was an albino. And he was getting McDonald's. I was like, oh, I haven't seen that before. But anyway, going back to that. So phenotypically, yes, I do get that this does show up in Africa, in sub-Saharan African. So even if you have the out of Africa thing, it had to have come from somewhere. Blue eyes, blonde hair, that came from somewhere and developed. And even if it was not directly in phenotypically there, as you go up to the north and you went up to Europe and you went to colder climes, the what's the thing? Not eugenics. I'm thinking epigenetics. So things are turned on due to the environment, and you adjust to it, and that's the kind of thing that happens. So I do understand that's there. But having this situation where you have these two twins, which are born, and one looks black, one looks white, that doesn't really happen that often. This is like a very fractional amount of things happening. But one of the more interesting things that a friend pointed out was the fact that this mindset that I'm talking about this, I was kind of doing this more of a troll thing, kind of going like, people calling about privilege and all random things. But one of my friends pointed out, like that example that I actually gave in the original post is an example of privilege. It could say that historically, people were treated that if you have one piece of somebody else, some other race, you have tainted the whiteness, and that makes it to be a situation where now you can't be considered white. That one drop rule, which to me I consider to be ridiculous. And I think people on the left politically, the progressives, the social justice whiner type, are more stuck to that one drop rule, saying like, okay, if somebody's mixed with one piece of non-white, it makes them that. They are that admixture. So even though I did agree with that, I can also kind of joke that to say you could also turn it around and say, yes, you're saying that if somebody has some black in them, they can't be white anymore because they've made the white dirty or they've somehow dirtified the whiteness. But then you can also say the black genes are so much stronger than the white genes that anything comes from outside and it kind of trumps what the whiteness is. And this will also just go back to like, what is whiteness when you talk about this? How do you define this? But one key thing that I've seen, I was wondering, what happens with the admixture when you have somebody who's mixed with maybe Arab or Southeast Asian, like talking about like maybe someone from like a Han Chinese family, Han Chinese genetics, or somebody from a Saudi family, a Saudi royal family, if they happen to marry outside and marry somebody who is Swedish, who is Nordic, what would that result of that kid be in the United States of America? Would they be considered Arab? Would they be considered Swedish? Or would they just be considered mixed? And now when you come to a place like Kenya, where I am right now, the dominant culture is Sub-Saharan African, or the tribes. So if you have a situation where somebody's married to somebody who's outside, even if they have one drop, even if it's like your parents were half or mixed or something. Let's say Barack Obama came here and had a kid with somebody else and he's mixed. That kid would not be considered black like everybody else. That kid would be considered a pointee. And pointee, they normally, that's just pointee, it's kind of a slang, a shang thing. Just point, I think it's just like half. It's like point something, like point something of something else. So that's one term they used to have in high school here. I mean, not in school, when I was in school here. So you're considered to be mixed. And that's the thing. If you're in Europe, if you're in the United States of America, whether you like it or not, that's a predominantly white culture. So it will make sense that if you have an admixture from outside, that person would be considered something else. And that's the same thing you see here in Kenya. If you have a mixture of something that's not Sub-Saharan African, you won't necessarily be considered part of the Sub-Saharan Africans. So it's not necessarily like the race thing and the racist thing. So that's just like my thoughts on that and just talking about this thing. What do you guys think about that? And have you actually seen that situation? Are you personally mixed? Do you know anyone that's mixed that has had some kind of discussion or wonderings trying to figure this out? Now, that article that I had mentioned is going to be links to the low bar for that. And I'm just going to read this part towards the end of this that I had thought of, that I had written in that. So when I was talking about this article, it had me thinking, the term black and white, is it used to determine race or just skin color? Or is it how somebody identifies themselves? Or is it how they behave? What exactly is it? So it's not necessarily the identification, because if you're talking about these babies, they don't self-identify as anything but smiling if they're not crying, or eating, or peeing, or pooping machines. And I doubt it's behavioral, since besides what I described with the babies, the older siblings look rather identical and will probably have many similar mannerisms and characteristics. So both sets were born of the same parents. Both pairs, well, one of each pair is being called white and the other one is being called black. So there's a chance that one of the parents are of mixed heritage as well. Regardless, both kids should have the same exact heritage, right? So why is one being called black and one called white? So when it comes to Barack Obama, who at that time that I wrote this, like I said back in 2009, I'd written here President-elect Obama. So long ago, it seems so long. But anyway, back to this article. President Obama, black father as I said, white mother, considered black. Someone like Vin Diesel, who I just found out considers himself colored, person of color, whatever that means, he doesn't have I mean, he hasn't ever met his father, but his mother told him that he's of mixed mixed race and mixed ancestry, whatever you want to call it, mixed ethnicity. But someone like Wentworth Miller from Prison Break, he has a white mother and a black father, in whichever ways you want to call this. Is he considered black like Barack Obama, even though he has the same admixture? I don't think so. And I'm not sure. I mean, I definitely don't think it would definitely be affected in the same way. Although it was that Jesse Williams character from, I think, General Hospital or some show like that. He was talking about in the BT. So I don't know exactly how it's being treated within the United States of America. But that's another thing I'm saying. That term black in the United States of America, it's really confusing to me. So anyway, back to the story about these two sets of twins that are one white, one black, as was mentioned. So here's a hypothetical situation. Just bear with me here. So this is after school, and they're all waiting outside of their schools. They're waiting for a cab. And they had 4 iPods present. This isn't real. Like I said, this was 2009. I was talking about iPods here. iPods don't even exist anymore. So let's say they have their iPhones or whatnot, and they're hailing a cab, and for some reason they're not using Uber or some other ride-sharing thing or anything. But anyway, so 2 of them are listening to rock and alternative music, and the other 2 are listening to hip-hop and R&B. They don't know why they were drawn to this music. They just were. So they collectively start hailing a cab. Then a cab would pull over to the left side of the road in front of the private school and let in the white sisters and then quickly drive off as the black sisters ran over from across the street. Now, why are the black sisters running over from across the street? Well, because the blackies attend the public school across the street that's run down from where the whiteys go across the street to this top private school. Since we all know that no self-respecting private school would pass the chance of letting in 2 white-looking kids while technically fulfill their quota for letting in black kids. So, winding this up, I'm not going to try to say that race doesn't matter. Even back in 2009 when I wrote this, I said, yeah, race still matters. I have more familiarity with some places in Europe, United States of America a lot more, in certain areas in the United States of America, having lived in capital city, Washington, D.C., so in the urban areas and also in the countryside in West Virginia, than experience here in Nairobi. But even in these different places, my kind of lifestyle is not necessarily the same where I can say, okay, I've actually seen everything that's going on with race relations and tribes and all these kind of in-group, out-group dynamics. So I'm not saying these things don't exist or not important, but what do they mean to people? What is privilege? What is something because it's just in the society? We all are human beings. We all develop our things in certain ways. Different things happen for the same reasons. The same things happen for different reasons. Remember those 2 things. So that's it for this video, and the illustration that's going to go with this is Cyborg from Justice League of America. There's probably not going to be any merchandise for this. I put on this Thor dough on the merchandise store, on the Redbubble merchandise store, links below, and it got taken down for copyright. So I need to double check and see what my copyright things are in certain things. But this is Cyborg, and I think it fits with this because I think we are getting to the point where we're soon going to have like cybernetic parts in it. So are we going to be human? How are we going to be called? Like when we have actual admixtures of actual human created things, or when we have situations where we can actually change our genetics around, where you can literally have, okay, there are genetic differences between the races, but you could literally probably have a situation where somebody goes in and you could have somebody, 2 Sub-Saharan, 100% Sub-Saharan African parents can somehow go in and change the genetics of their kid and actually give birth to like a completely Asian kid. That could be a possibility. What would happen in that situation? What would that do to race? What will cybernetics do to race? But yeah, try to watch this Justice League movie soon. If there is a situation with figuring out the copyright, I'll start putting these ones up too. But anyway, check out the links below to the store. There's going to be other stuff in there that's not copyright stricken, whatever. But yeah, thanks for listening. Till next video, like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, goodbye, and may you enjoy whatever privilege you have.